Today's Toy Spot, we are continuing our looks at the Marvel Legends Marvel's Sandman wave, as we have a look today in this video at Marvel's Shocker. Shocker comes with one of the legs needed for Sandman, also comes with two constructs, two things that you can attach to his hands. And I mentioned in my look at the Juggernaut wave, I don't like these, and I'll talk more about that when we get this guy opened up, but nonetheless, on the side of the box, some really good artwork there of Shocker, featured on the other side there as well. And the back of the package shows you Shocker with those two constructs, little two energy things that you can add to his body. The read-up says, Herman Schultz suits up in battle armor that produces intense shock waves, earning him the notorious name, Shocker. Other figures down below, a total of 7 figures to build Sandman here. You have Green Goblin, you have Spider-Man 2099, you have Spider UK, Miss Marvel, Black Costume Spider-Man, Marvel's Jackal, and Marvel's Shocker. Check out more from the folks over at Marvel by heading over to www.marvel.com. Spot's going to take a break and get this opened up. When we come back, we're getting a better look not only at the component piece needed for Sandman, but we're also going to be having a look at Marvel's Shocker. There's more heading your way, guys. Don't go anywhere. Stay tuned. Let's get the Build-A-Figure component piece out of the way first. Shocker comes with one of the legs for Sandman. A fairly simple looking pant leg with some laced up boots down below, or laced up singular boots down below. Let's go ahead and reach off camera to Sandman. Now, one plus to having the figure with a smaller peg, larger peg, is you know right away which leg is going to go into place. Even if you don't know, you always look for the curve of the inside of the sole to indicate that that would go inward. So we just attach the leg here to the peg. And for these, you gotta really apply a lot of pressure. Not certainly to the extent of the Dormammu wave, which just was disastrous. But there you go. That's what we got so far. Still need another leg, still need 2 arms, still need a head. But there's Sandman nonetheless. Okay, we'll put him to the side. All right, so Shocker comes with these two things. We've seen these before, and they've varied. I mean, initially I thought they were the same ones. I don't think they're the same ones as the Doctor Strange and, you know, Scarlet Witch and stuff like that, but these don't read at all like Shocker. Nor did really when they were used for Havoc do I feel like they made sense for him either. Shocker for me as a character that uses sound waves or, you know, shock waves to disable and destroy. This does not read at all like a shock wave, ripple wave. I mean, the fact that you've got all these little extra bubbles and little spheres on the side, this looks more like magic than it does look like a wave. They should have actually just done something like this, you know? And maybe even had it where it was 3-dimensional. So the wave could have just gone out like this. And maybe you could have had clear connector points, something that it kept it all together so it wouldn't snap on you. But this, at no way, shape, or form, does that look like something that I would attach to Shocker. Of course, I'm going to put it on Shocker, but it doesn't really look like anything that suits the character. To put him on him, there's these little clamp points here. You see these little C clamps? And you're just going to slide them on. Just like that, just attach them into place. These never really sit all that well. If you also have a tough time getting them on, you can also take the wrist off the socket, then fit these on, like that, then put the wrist back on in place. Just if you have some issues trying to get them onto Shocker. Now I ask you, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, does that look anything like something Shocker should really have? I don't personally think so. That's just me. I think they look a little silly on him. It looks like something you would see outside in the garden as like a decorative thing, maybe around your lattice. You would just have like vines growing around it. It doesn't look at all like a shock wave or a ripple wave, something that would look more like something that should go with Shocker. This is what they give us. This is ultimately what I'm going to display him with. I might even just display him without it, to be perfectly honest. But we'll just move these to the side. As for Shocker himself, so much of me wants to really like this figure because I'm a big fan of Shocker. I had the original Spider-Man Classics Shocker, which had shortcomings. It had a little vibrating thing where the arms, I think the arms vibrate. I did a review of it, if you guys want to check it out, many years ago. So be kind, it's older videos, older content, guys, older content. But I almost feel like that figure I liked more than this figure here. It has everything that Shocker should have, but by the same token, he comes across very, I don't want to say boring, because there's really nothing boring about him, but he just doesn't seem like he has the oomph that I would want from a Shocker. One of the big things I find as a fault to this particular figure is that his head is extremely big versus the rest of his torso. It's either one of two things. His head looks either too big, or his head looks too far up on his neck that it throws off the proportions of his torso. His torso and the rest of his body all jive, but then you've got this big head that sits on top of the small frame of his torso, and it looks out of place. One of the other issues that I have is, I don't know why, but this figure has one big eye and one small eye. That can sit fine when it comes to those, a Spider-Man or even a Deadpool, but not for Shocker. I can't imagine that be deliberate. And if anything, it probably was, if you can hopefully see it right there. See how underneath the figure's eyeball, there's like this sculpted line. That's where the line should have been, and simply my eyeball, not my eyeball, his eyeball. His eyeball is just a little lower than that. So it's, to me, I think it's a quality, it's just a QC issue where that eye has been made bigger than it really needs to be. He has the, I always look at, this is why I like him so much. He really reminds me all the time of Copperhead from G.I. Joe. Or like Python Patrol. There you go, Python Patrol Copperhead. So he's got this cross-hatching that makes up his head, makes up the interior of his arms, the interior of his torso, and the outside of his legs. The problem is, because there's no sculpt to it, like the lines just seem like they don't feel like they have any sort of merit to them. Whereas I feel like the original Copperhead, not the original Copperhead, the original Shocker from the Spider-Man Classics line, I felt like just had a lot more detail, just a lot more oomph going to him. The paint, I can't really nitpick the paint because the paint's pretty good. Even the areas that would have been questionable, such as the actual cross-hatching, seems notably clear and clean on the figure. Yeah, sure, there's areas as it gets closer to the browns where the browns start blending themselves into this slight yellowish gold yellow color. But for the most part, it's generally clean. The brown that they used also is a nice color. Then you've got the little gauntlets on the sides of his wrists and hands, also painted quite nicely in a very juggernaut style of hammered out metal. I like that. I don't know why his eyes have to be as pearl. They're not quite white. Spot just recently looked at the Marvel Select brown costume Wolverine, and he almost had that same issue. The eyes almost come across more like a silverish white than they do just a straight solid white. The figure's articulation, let's run through that together. His head rotates all the way around. A hinge up and down. Even if you kind of hinge the head down, it distorts the head just enough that it doesn't look as big, but it still doesn't help. Not 100%. Shoulders hinge out, as you would expect with these Marvel Legends. Rotation all the way around on the arms. Here's a rotation on the bicep. Double hinged on the elbow. A rotation on the wrist. And a hinge back and forth. Somebody asked me why Spot doesn't do it on both arms. It's simple for the simple reason it's the same articulation. There's no sense in me going to this arm and doing the exact same thing. This video would be just bogged down with all this articulation. Really, I can show you one side, it's exactly the same on the other. So for the one leg, which actually would be both legs, forward and back motion on the legs, they stop at about there. A natural motion and progression, I think, for the legs. A rotation all the way around on the top cut of the thigh. Double hinge knee. I like how the knee pad actually is a divider between the two hinges. It's not like Rogue where you just have this loose kneecap moving around, this little loose part of her boot. No, they did a good job of this is what they should have done with Rogue. Put the top of her boot right in between the joints, and it would have worked perfectly fine. It has a rotation at the boot, a hinge back and forth on the foot, and a slight ankle pivot back and forth. Not as much as Ms. Marvel that we just looked at. Pros for this figure, let's run through that. Pros for this figure, good coloring, clean paint application. Sculpt for the most part, I know I said it's boring. I mean, it's not boring because it's making use of the same body mold as other Marvel Legends. By that merit, I have to kind of look at it, the fact that paint application differs one figure to another. It's very similar to the DC Universe figures back in the day. Utilized a lot of the same body mold, so paint really was the decider factor. In this case, the paint is clean, the paint is well executed, the paint is vibrant, but the head sculpt, I wish personally could have been better. I don't know if simply they could have just taken the head and squished it a little bit more so it was a shorter looking head, but the head seems too big for his torso. As a side note as well, I'm not super crazy about these either. This, I know toy companies always want to make use of existing molds. The more they can make out of one mold, the less they have to worry about retooling brand new molds. So I get it, but this really does not fit Shocker, in my personal opinion. Good figure. I'm still kind of on the fence. I feel like I like the Spider-Man Classics Shocker just a little bit more. Obviously, he doesn't fit quite the same display options, I think, as other Marvel Legends. This guy fits the bill better for that. But I feel like the figure doesn't deliver as much as what I wanted from the figure to happen, what we ended up getting here in physical form. Today's Toy Spot, we were looking at, again, not a bad figure, but a figure that I think could have just been a little bit better. Today we're having a look at the Sandman wave. This was Shocker. Oh, this was Marvel's Shocker. Let's put that in there as well. Stay tuned, guys. Spot's got a couple more figures lined up. Of course, as we put this guy together, we still got we got a leg, a couple limbs, still a lot more going on for him. Thanks for watching as you always do, guys. I'll see you next time.